one important point what you need to know about this Bank for International Settlement is that it is located in Basel, which is in Switzerland. Okay, so that's bank has that name also, Basel Bank or Bank for International Settlement. Okay, so there is a bank, and specialty of this bank is that presently even though earlier there used to be private members also, presently there is only central bank is there. This bank has only, so this bank can be called as central bank's bank. This bank can be called as central bank's bank. Okay. So since this Bank for International Settlement is central bank's bank, and it have a very important role in preventing any banking failure. To try to understand that we are living in a globalized era. Okay, when we live in a globalized era, anything happening to one market, it will have an impact over the entire global economy. Okay, if you look into the 2007-8 global financial crisis, okay, 2007-8 global financial crisis, it emerged in US, and the major reason for it is a banking failure in the US. Okay, so, and it spread over the entire world. And this 2007-8 global financial crisis, why it is not called as US financial crisis? Because it spread over the entire world. Okay, but the origin is US. And what is the reason? Because the US bank, okay, once you know the reason for the global financial crisis, you will understand why BASEL have come up with such a stringent banking norms, regulatory norms. Okay, the reason is, I'll just give you a brief idea regarding the global financial crisis. In 2007-8, in that or before that period, okay, before that, especially in the 2000, there was real estate boom in US. There was real estate boom in US. Real estate boom means real estate prices are increasing. Okay, so what the US banks have done during that time is, they used to give cheap loans. Cheap loans, as well as there is another loan what is called as teaser loans. Teaser loans in the sense that there used to be high interest rate. Okay, initially there will be low interest rate, but over a period of time the interest rate will increase. That is what is called as teaser loan, but RBI have banned it in India. What I am trying to say is that, see, normally when a bank gives loan to a customer, what is the credential which normally bank look into? They will look into the credibility, whether he will pay back the interest. Okay, that his creditworthiness is a very important factor, yes or no? Now also when we go to for a bank to take a loan, why bank ask you many documents where they are asking you to pay back your annual income tax return, to just look into that whether you have the capacity to pay back the EMI. Okay, but in US what has happened is that the banks never looked into the background of the borrowers. That's why that is called as subprime lending. Subprime in US, that time there was subprime lending was there, and that crisis also called as subprime crisis. Subprime lending means they are lending, US banks used to lend to subprime borrowers. Subprime borrowers are those borrowers who don't have a good credit track record. There is a high chance of default. Even though they were knowing, the banks were knowing that they will default. Why? There was continuous increase in the real estate sector because of real estate boom. You're getting the point? Even see, what is the specialty of this real estate loan or the housing loan, like common mean housing loan? There is an asset is there. It is a mortgage based lending. And if any customer default, bank need not to worry. They will take over that asset and the asset price is increasing and it will get back the money. So that confidence was there. But what happened? This real estate bubble broken. Real estate prices started crashing. So then problem started. Already these people started defaulting, but they were not, bank were not able to get back that real value loan amount because the real estate price have crashed. So that is why it is called as this crisis. It's called as this US subprime crisis. Because, so here there are many people who are reason for this failure. Not only the bank. Not only the bank, okay. Even the central bank was not able to prevent this, could not able to see this. It should have regulated these banks. So, by looking into, see, already there have been many regulatory norms controlling different banks over a period of time. This crisis which had an impact not only in US but all over the world. This BASEL norm have been come up. See, already there is, before this global financial crisis, there were two BASEL norms. So just have an idea. BASEL norms have been set up by this bank, central bank, but there is a committee on BASEL, committee on banking supervision, which has the mandate to come up with this standard banking regulatory norms. That's why they are called as BASEL norms. They are what? Every banks will have to implement certain standard regulatory banking norms. So what is the reason to have certain these regulatory? So that the bank will not go for high risky business. What is this banking high risky business? Banking going for lending without looking into the, see, they are going for high risky business. See, there is a benefit also for the bank, because when they used to give them this high risky loan, they were charging high interest rate also. But by simply charging interest rate and not getting it, there is no point in it. Okay, so you have to look into all these factors. So just have an idea why Basel III norms have become very stringent. Now all the central bank now became alert. Everybody was criticized. Okay, but that time our banking sector didn't have any problems. If you look into the when many big banks was having a problem in 7, 8, 9, we didn't have any banking related problem. We had the global slowdown because of this financial crisis. There was market failure, capital market failure was there. Stock market prices crashed. Because of the decrease in demand for goods and services, our export have decreased. Our economic growth have decreased. But our banks have not failed. Who is the reason? Because of our RBI was following a stringent regulatory banking norms. But now, so because RBI used to be a comparatively autonomous body. And that's why RBI always used to be appreciated. This Basel committee always used to appreciate this central bank, Indian central bank, because of its independence and because of its stringent regulatory norm, and thereby preventing many bank failures in India. Even though developed countries like US had bank failure, a developing country like India didn't had such a bank failure. So that's why again all these you have to keep in mind, this recent prompt corrective action framework and the recent stringent norms RBI have initiated regarding the non-performing assets, all are aimed at preventing bank failure. Because if bank failed, because banks is running based on depositors' money, you know that majority of the banks' money is coming from depositors' money, our money, people's money. Okay, so if a bank fail, normally then, see, normally the government have to intervene. Again, government have to rescue the bank. Again, people's money is being spent. Okay, so that's the reason why we want to prevent any, it's not only just rescuing the bank, it has a ripple effect over the economy. Okay, so since Basel norm, which is the latest Basel norm, is the third Basel norm, which was, see, when Basel II norms was about to implement in India, this global financial crisis have happened, and that's why we have implemented this. By the time Basel came up with this Basel third norm, and we started implementing Basel III norm. Okay, and why this year Basel norm is very important is, actually our time period for India, the time period to implement Basel norm was 2018-19. The time period to implement Basel norm in India is 2019-19. What is the year which we are standing? It's over. It's over. Okay, but due to many banking related crises, we have extended certain day. We have made some flexibility. So we have seen that this liquidity coverage ratio, last class we had discussed, that was a Basel norm to have to be attained by January 2019, and we attained it. But even though we attained 100% liquidity coverage ratio, we made some compromise in the form of FALLCR. Okay, that's why that is very important for you. Now, there are other parameters also where RBI have made a flexibility, in the sense that there was another criteria, that is capital conservation buffer. I will discuss. That is very important also. Capital conservation buffer, which is again a Basel norm, have been extended. We have shared the articles also. It has to be completed by March 2019. Now, one more year extension is there. By March 2020, the bank have to implement that capital conservation buffer. So, we will discuss all those things. I am just telling you why Basel norm is very important for your coming prelims. Okay, so have a background regarding this. So, basically, So the word, okay, try to understand that it's a international regulatory accord, okay. Why it is a international regulatory accord? Because it's set by an international bank which consists of central banks. Okay. So what is their aim? To improve the regulation, supervision and risk management within the banking sector, only banking sector. This norm, BASEL norm, is associated with banking sector only. Now why the name BASEL? Because the bank is settled in Basel, New Switzerland. Okay. So this was, I told you, after the financial crisis, global financial crisis of during that period, the Basel Committee on Banking Supervision have recommended it, and it is an upgradation of the earlier two norms. Basel 3 norm is an upgradation of the earlier two norms, Basel 1 and Basel 2. I'll just discuss a few what are the major changes happened regarding Basel 2 to Basel 3. Okay. So already we this Basel Committee on Banking Supervision have already come up with two norms, Basel 1 and Basel 2. But now what has been implemented is Basel 3, which is the updated banking regulatory norm. Okay. So while looking into basic aim of Basel norm is what? To prevent any bank failure, as well as by looking into the certain financial parameters of a bank, the central bank of that country can identify that this bank will fail or not. So, it's like prevention is better, okay, so than cure. Okay, so that is actually this Basel law, preventing the bank from any failure before it starts any sign of weaknesses. Okay, so to look into the financial strength of a bank, Basel norm have come up with certain parameters, financial parameters. If these are, every bank should have these parameters. If they are above this parameter, then there is nothing to worry. If they are not, there is a concern. The central bank of that particular country have to take action against them. Okay. So this BIS cannot do anything. Basel cannot do anything. Basel bank cannot do anything. It is the central bank how to implement it. So it is the duty of the RBI to implement the Basel norms in India. And one interesting thing about RBI is that why RBI was appreciated by Basel Committee on Banking Supervision is that because RBI have set a higher standard than what recommended by Basel. Okay, so now three things are there. Actually, these three things will help you to understand, because already in 2018 there was a question regarding this first part, capital adequacy ratio, and so there is a chance that they may ask you question regarding leverage or liquidity. Already liquidity coverage ratio also we have discussed. Okay, so these are, now initially in Basel 2 only this was there. In Basel 2 this parameter was only there. These two parameters were added by Basel 3. Okay. So what is this first parameter? Okay, first parameter is looking into the capital strength or capital adequacy of a bank. Okay. And we measure the capital adequacy of a bank using a ratio, what is called as capital adequacy ratio. We have discussed in the concept, or another name for capital adequacy ratio is capital to risk weighted asset ratio. So this is a very important parameter to look into whether, so it is like this, okay, imagine you are doing a business, okay, and your business failed. So normally what happened, if business failed or you had a loss, it's not fail, you had a loss for a 2 year, but you have a belief in that business, you want to continue in it. So normally if you want to continue the business, what you have to do? Whenever you have a loss, you have certain liabilities. You have to pay the liabilities. So normally during a loss time, nobody will be there to help you, because a failed business will not be supported by anyone, including bank. Or if somebody helps you, they will take over your business. Okay, getting the point? So, but if you are smart during the business period, okay, during your good period, you have saved. At the end of time, means when you are making 50 lakh as profit or 100 crore or 1 crore or 2 crore as profit, what you have done? You started saving. You start keeping as reserve, because you know that your business is a risky business. Every time there will not be profit. So I will keep certain proportion of my reserves in some assets, maybe land or gold or some property like that. If you do so, what will happen? During a bad time, when nobody is there to help you and when you require money, what you can do? You can use this assets, you can sell it off and run the business. You getting the point? So like that. So here, since banking sector, which is a financial sector, is highly risky business, yes or no? Is banking is a risky business? Obviously, bank is giving loan. See, many risks is there. First, bank is taking deposits. Okay, it is taking depositors' money. It is a liability. So normally, when they take deposit in the form of fixed deposit, you have to pay a fixed interest. Yes or no? Okay, and savings deposit, there is a interest other than current account deposit. All other deposits which is taking interest bearing is there. Second is that it is giving. What is the major business of a bank? Giving loan, and there is always a chance of some people defaulting. So you have to be very careful in giving loans to the customers. Okay, even good customers will have bad time, they will default. So since banking is a risky business, it has made, see what will happen is that when you hear that, okay, a bank financial strength is weak or bank is going to fail, suddenly what will happen? A panic will happen. Depositors will come and start in a queue by asking the money, depositors' money. Nobody will be there to help the bank. Only government will be there. You know that government, it's very difficult for the government to help all the banks. So, the banking regulator, who is the banking regulator in India? RBI, have made it very clear, okay, you cannot, whenever you make profit or whenever you have to ensure that certain capital, you have to always keep it as reserve. You have to keep certain capital, means keep that reserve with you, keep certain capital or amount with you. Don't use the entire amount for business. Means don't invest the entire amount. Don't give it as loan or invest in government securities. Keep something as adequate capital or in liquid assets form, highly liquid assets form, or as capital reserve. Okay. So that whenever you have a problem, you can use this capital and you can run the business. Okay. Even though you have a bad time, you can run it. Okay, if you look into the public sector banks is having bad losses consecutively. Consecutively, they are not profit making, but still they are running because of the reserve they are having. But it cannot run for long. So it requires more capital, more money, and that too not debt money. Debt money means money borrowed money. Bank also can borrow from someone else, na? Mainly from equity money, equity funding. Because that will not be any burden for the bank. Okay. So this you keep in mind. Okay. So in order to decide which is a safe capital, how much bank, see this is what is called as regulatory capital. Okay. This word is very important. Bank should keep regulatory capital because this is a capital regulator have fixed to deal with any crisis. So how much each bank should have to keep with them. How much is the adequate regulatory capital a bank should hold? How it is determined? It is determined by this particular ratio. And the capital, regulatory capital required for each bank will be different. Yes or no? Will the regulatory capital of each bank will be the same amount? No, because large bank have to keep large amount because for them risk is high. The more loan you give, the more default is there. That's why again RBI have categorized certain banks into systematically important bank, domestically systematic. For example, SBI, HDFC banks are, ICICI bank are domestic. So they will have more stringent regulation. Then they will be having a separate higher norms for them. Because if they default and if they fail, it will have a larger impact to the system, entire financial system. Okay. So that you need to keep in mind. Okay. So to know how much each bank should have or which amount they should not lend is decided by this capital adequacy requirement or capital adequacy ratio. Another name is capital to risk weighted asset ratio. And how we calculate this capital to risk weighted asset ratio is that it is, we'll discuss in detail. Okay, the denominator, since it is a ratio, the denominator is risk weighted assets. This word is here, in capital adequacy ratio, or also called by the name capital to risk weighted asset ratio, the denominator is risk weighted assets. Now why it is called, see, each asset will be having, what is the bank's main asset? Loan. Each asset or loan or investment it has made, that is asset, okay. Investment in government securities is also asset for a bank. Loan is an asset for a bank, okay. So each asset, RBI have, based on the BASEL norms, have set a risk. Each asset is having a risk weight. But government securities have been given a risk weight of 0. So housing loan, there is a risk weight is there. Real estate, other than housing loan, other real estate loan, there is a gold loan, there is a risk weight is there. Business loan, there is a risk weight is there. Okay, giving loan to power sector, there is a risk weight. Agricultural loan, education loan, every loan or every asset is having a different risk weight. So that is the denominator. And numerator is the regulatory capital. Here is what is called as, there are two types of capital, okay, tier 1 and tier 2 capital is there. I will explain in detail tier 1 and tier 2 capital. So basically these capital, tier 1 and tier 2 capital will be the fund be used by the bank when they have any problem, financial problem or failure or something like that, okay, financial weaknesses. Okay, so tier 1 and tier 2 we will discuss in detail because there are many correlated concepts is there. Now my question is, how this is, so what RBI have done or what BASEL have done is, BASEL have made it mandatory, okay, see it. BASEL have made it mandatory that every bank should have a capital adequacy ratio of 8%. But what RBI have done in India is that it has made it 9%. Say 8%, so the capital adequacy ratio have to be 8%. Now you need to understand that how this 8%, so it should not be below 8%. This is, I am talking about BASEL, I am not talking about RBI because we will discuss in RBI also in the coming next topic. So this 8% capital adequacy ratio is set by the under the BASEL norm. Okay, so 8% to, and in order to attain the, always it should be 8%. It should never go below 8%. Okay, now keep this in mind. Why I am discussing in detail is that when I will discuss prompt corrective action framework, again, see this is again it's a related thing. See actually through prompt corrective action framework, what RBI is trying to do is, it is implementing the BASEL norms. So one of the parameter in prompt corrective action framework, see prompt corrective action framework is a very weak thing, okay. It is like a, you know that watch list, na? That IPR watch list, this US have come up with a mini watch list, okay. So like this, prompt corrective action framework is weak bank watch list. RBI have set, based on certain parameters, RBI have identified certain banks as weak and strong bank, okay. Weak banks is put under watch list by RBI. So how RBI will identify a particular bank as a weak bank? Means weak bank chances of failure is high, yes or no? Strong bank chances is very rare. But weak bank, so based on, so one of the parameter RBI look into whether a bank is weak or not under the prompt corrective action framework is capital adequacy ratio. So in both the places this concept is very important for you. That's why I am again discussing it, okay. So keep this in mind regarding, so when the risk, so in order to keep this 8% and above, okay, so this capital, there are two things is there. If you want to keep a numerator, or means if you want to keep a ratio high, what will happen is, you should ensure that either numerator should be high or denominator should be decreasing. Denominator should decrease or numerator should increase. If for the numerator to increase, you have to infuse capital. Mostly this tier 1 and tier 2 capital, mostly this tier 1 capital, okay. Again, I will just give you an idea that this, there is a, in this tier 1 capital, the most important share is 5.5% share is for common equity tier 1 capital, okay. Tier 1 common equity means it is share capital. So majority of this capital has to be share capital. Why share capital? Because there is no debt, no burden. It is easy to, so whenever a crisis happens, this share capital can be used to deal, and this capital should not be used by the bank. Unlike other banking, other business, banks should not use, it should be kept in that way, okay, because to deal with the crisis, okay. So majority of the capital is common equity, share capital. It is the share capital. Okay. So if you want to always keep this ratio higher, you have to increase this tier 1 and tier 2 capital in a high, or this should not. And if this go high, what will happen? If the denominator go high, the ratio will come down. So how the denominator will go high? When the denominator will go high, when you are giving loans to highly risky, if you are giving high risky loan, suddenly this ratio will go below. So bank will be very careful to keep this ratio higher. Bank will be very careful in giving loans. Okay, it will be very careful in giving loans. So it will give loans to, see, they will not take high risky loans, many. They will go for only selective risky loans. They will have a balance of risky loans and non-risky loans. And also they will have, and whenever, every year, whenever there is profit, they will not completely give the profit to the shareholders. A proportion will be transferred to this tier 1 and tier 2 capital, so that this numerator will also increase. You getting the point? So this is one. So again, so there are two components. Okay, two interesting things regarding this capital adequacy requirement. One is the bank should keep a capital adequacy ratio of 8%. Capital adequacy ratio of 8%. Okay, keep this in mind. Okay, but what RBI have done? The RBI have made it 9%. In India, it is 9%. And the second thing is another thing. Okay, this is another current affair. So additional thing. So along with the capital adequacy ratio of 8% according to BASEL, 9% according to RBI, additional 2.5% of capital conservation buffer is there. See, from it is again an additional buffer. Okay, so this was again capital conservation buffer. They can ask you who introduced it. Again, BASEL 3. BASEL 3 introduced it. So capital conservation buffer was not there in BASEL 2. Now what is this buffer, specialty of this buffer? Now why it is again a current affair? Because this capital conservation buffer only, the date RBI actually by March 2019, this 2.5 goal have to be attained by 2.5 should be attained by the bank. So this is additional. And two important point about this buffer is that one, this buffer have to be accumulated over a period of time. This 2.5 is not drastic. It is again every year. Actually, it was like this. Okay, again I will discuss in detail. For time being, you understand that regarding this capital conservation buffer. So this word you need to be clear with. This word you will come across many times. CET1. What is this? Common equity tier 1 capital. Common equity tier 1 capital. Okay, it is nothing but share capital. CET1 is share capital. Common equity tier 1 capital. Okay, just a pure share capital. From you had studied paid up capital. Okay. Now, in capital conservation buffer, see, in the case of capital adequacy ratio, it is in tier 1 and tier 2. In tier 1, there is equity capital is also there, and there are other capitals also there. We'll discuss in detail. But in the case of capital conservation buffer, it should be common equity tier capital, nothing else. One important point, capital conservation buffer should only have common equity tier 1 capital. It means share capital, one important point. Second is that it should have been this goal of common equity tier capital of 2.5%. Again, it is regarding risk weighted asset. 2.5% common equity tier capital to what? 2.5% in relation to what? Risk weighted assets. Additional, this is additional. And it was like this. It should have been attained in 4 stages. RBI have implemented in 4 stages. I hope that you know maths. Add, you'll get 2.5. Now this I'll discuss you this. Okay. This have to be attained by 18-19, 17-18, 16-17, 15-16. So from this RBI started implementing. Okay. So what RBI have said is that from 15-16 onwards, bank, see, the concept of capital conservation buffer is that what BASEL says, what BASEL have said is that during good period, see, bank will have good period, now there is good period, okay. See, if you look into the 2004, 5, 5, 6, 6, 7, 7, 8 were good period for the banking sector. Okay, so normally what BASEL saying is that during good period, what they have to do? They have to increase this buffer capital. During good period, they have to increase it and reach the level of 2.5% of risk-weighted assets. After reaching that, and that's sufficient, 2.5 is sufficient. And during bad time, you can use this first. Instead of directly going to the tier 1, tier 2, the 9%, first use this during a stress period, high stress period, use this 2.5%. So it's basically an additional protective cover, additional protection, capital conservation buffer. So how to be accumulated during good time and during bad time you can withdraw it. But what RBI said that, okay, we are going to implement this capital conservation buffer from 2015-16 and 0.625% we will add it, and by 2018-19 we will attain the goal of, now you see it, so it's 0.625, in 16-17 it has reached 1.25, yes or no? Now this year is very important when we discuss about this PCA. This today's class is a lot of maths is also involved, okay, but very interesting. Actually, I'm saying surely you will get a question, you will not, you can easily answer it, okay. Again, when you read newspaper regarding prompt corrective action framework, see, prompt corrective action framework we has from 2002 onwards, but in 2017, RBI revised the prompt corrective action framework. So, in April 2017, RBI revised the prompt corrective action framework. So, in 2017, what was the standard at that time? It was 9% capital. See, what the bank have to implement? Capital adequacy in 2017 time period, okay. So, in this period, it was 9% of capital adequacy ratio and 1.2% of, okay. So, this when you see the prompt corrective action framework, you may see this, they will say that 10.25 should be the capital. If, see that from 10.25 they will compare. So, you need to understand why this 10.25. It is 1.25 of. So, the trigger point, one of the trigger point for a weak bank based on capital adequacy is 10.25. This 1.25 is from capital. Okay, but see, already many banks have to follow. So that is, I am talking about PCA thing. But every bank according to RBI, every bank presently should have 9% of capital adequacy ratio and 1.875% of, add this also. Okay, are you confused? Sushma, maths? See, when I'll discuss this capital conservation buffer, I'll come back, okay. So, time being, are you clear with these 4 stages? Because see, what I'm trying to do is that I'm explaining 3 things. BASEL law, capital conservation buffer and prompt corrective action framework, okay. Remove prompt corrective action framework from your mind. Come back, prompt corrective action framework, I'll discuss it. That is the 3rd topic. First understand BASEL law. Then we will understand capital conservation buffer, and then we will go to prompt corrective action. So forget prompt corrective. So I am not giving you this prompt, removing it. But this figure, this value keep in mind. Okay, then only when I will explain this prompt corrective action, you will understand. Are you clear with this? This was the RBI plan to implement capital conservation buffer. This you keep in mind. Okay. So just keep in mind that when in April 2017, RBI revised this prompt corrective action framework. We will come back to this prompt corrective action framework. Okay, so first thing according to BASEL law, this point you keep in mind. This is actually what I want. Rest everything, if you have any confusion, remove it from your mind. One, that capital adequacy ratio of 8% and capital conservation buffer of 2.5% is the norm, capital adequacy norm according to BASEL law. For RBI it is 9% plus 2.5%. Now come to the second parameter, leverage. Leverage ratio, okay. Again, leverage ratio is used in PCA, okay. So you need to understand what is this leverage, okay. Normally, see this concept of first I make you understand the meaning of leverage in relation to a normal company, a private company. Then we'll go to banking sector. See, whenever you raise capital to do business, you look into two factors. Right? When you want to do business, one, you will bring share capital, means your equity capital, your shareholders capital. That's no burden to it. Second is, you will borrow money. For example, I am going to do a business, okay. I want to start a business and I require 100 crore. I want to do a business and I require 100 crore to start this business. 40 crore, me, myself and my partners have brought. That is our share capital. 40 crore, no burden. 60 crore we are going to take from bank loan. This is bank loan. So this is equity. This is debt. Now debt has a problem. Debt is always a liability. You have to pay the liability in regular interval. Okay. So leverage ratio normally for a financial firm is how much debt out of your total capital. Out of your total capital, how much is the debt proportion? Debt, how much the capital you have raised through debt. Now the problem here is, there is no problem if my company is making profit in the beginning itself. And able to, from the profit, I am able to pay the EMI, interest, regularly. And after paying the interest also I am making profit. Then there is no problem. You get the point? I am making profit, I am able to pay EMI and then also there is surplus is there. So it's okay. But during bad time, when I am not making sufficient profit, means I am not in a position to pay, my profit is not sufficient to pay my obligation, that is debt or interest, then this ratio will, so here the question, so leverage ratio, the maximum leverage a financial company or company can take, because you should not, again, higher leverage ratio means high debt to equity means the chances of default is high, risk is very high. So there should be a balance regarding this leverage ratio. There should be a safety level regarding the debt funding. Now here, but in the case of this leverage ratio definition in BASEL norm or for banking sector, it is a bit different. So that is general. This is not required for you. This is a general definition. What is leverage ratio? They will only ask from the banking point of view only. What is mentioned in the BASEL? But you need to understand that it is basically the proportion of debt and equity. Okay. Now leverage ratio, normally this is again very important. The leverage ratio according to, I'll explain what is this leverage ratio. Leverage ratio according to BASEL should be 3% or more. Leverage ratio should not go below, like in the case of 3% or more is it should not go below. This is BASEL norm. RBI is, in the PCA it is having a higher standard, 4% it is. Under the PCA, we'll discuss. So it is everything it's like this, you collect it, 1% additional. Okay, now what is this? How to calculate this leverage ratio? It is, leverage ratio is calculated by tier 1 capital. Basically this tier 1 capital is almost equity capital. In tier 1 we'll discuss, you can see negligible debt instrument in the tier 1 capital. Divided by total assets. Okay, don't get confused with capital adequacy ratio. In capital adequacy ratio, it is denominator is risk weighted assets. It is not risk weighted assets here. In leverage, the total assets of the bank, which is mentioned in the balance sheet. It can be anything. See, in the case of risk weighted assets in the government, the investment in government securities is 0, because risk weight in government securities is 0. But here it is saying the entire total asset of a bank. In the entire total asset of a bank, how much is the tier 1 capital, which is considered to be the equity component. Tier 1 capital is majorly is what? Equity capital. Okay, so this again, so there should be a minimum Tier 1 capital. Okay, this ratio, if it is going low means, what it is showing, if it is going low means the total assets is increasing. So in proportion to this is actually a safety capital. It is again a safety capital. Tier 1 capital are safety capital, because whenever there is a default, see, banks' assets are what? They are all risky thing. They are always a chance of risk in this. Okay, so this you need to again, a leverage ratio. Normally there is an obligation. This leverage ratio lower means obligation is high. Leverage ratio higher means obligation is less, because debt component will become. See, in the total asset, if you look into the total asset of a bank, if it is not a share capital, if it is not a share capital for the bank, rest is, what will it will be? Either the loan it has taken, or the depositor's money. All are liability. All are liability for the bank. Okay, so this is another parameter, leverage ratio, which was added in the BASEL 3. It was not there. It was not there in BASEL 2. Third one is liquidity. And we already discussed about liquidity. Okay, and in India only one. See, according to BASEL norm, there are two liquidity ratios are there. In India, we have implemented only one. Second one is not been implemented. So the second one. So one is, see, one is shorter liquidity coverage ratio. One other is longer liquidity coverage ratio. One name is called as liquidity coverage ratio and net stable funding ratio. Liquidity coverage ratio. So we discussed what is liquidity coverage ratio. High quality liquid assets. Liquidity coverage ratio consists of high quality liquid assets divided by the 30 days short term obligation. That is liquidity coverage ratio. And liquidity coverage ratio has to be maintained by every bank by which was the date? January 2019, and we attained it. We attained it. So liquidity coverage ratio was important. And net stable funding ratio, it is for 1 year period. It is for 1 year period. Here it is for 30 days. Okay, but here liquidity is basically in high quality liquid assets. In India, we have considered this high quality liquid assets mainly from government security. So these three things, parameters, you keep in mind. They can ask you what are the basic parameters on which BASEL or banking committee on BASEL committee on banking supervision have ensured regulatory norms and for the members, that is members of central banks. Okay, so please have an idea regarding it. Now we'll discuss. Okay, I told you that we are coming back to that capital adequacy ratio. In capital adequacy ratio, I told you that banks capital, regulatory capital consists of Tier 1 and Tier 2 capital. Tier 1 and Tier 2 capital. Okay, you need to understand. See, no, don't go in depth. Just have an understanding. What is the common most important Tier 1 component? What is the most important Tier 2 component? Okay. So total regulatory capital is in India. See, we are talking now coming back to India. Okay, what is the capital being included in the Tier 1 and Tier 2 by RBI in India? Okay. So one name for Tier 1 capital is this word also you will come across, core capital. Tier 1 capital is also called by the name core capital. And Tier 2 capital is supplementary capital. Again, one thing, see, when the bank faces any problem, any financial problem or financial stress, they can use it without stopping its operation, banking operation. It can use the Tier 1 capital. So Tier 2 capital or supplementary capital can be used, will be used once the bank is closed and liquidated. During liquidation time only, the Tier 2 capital can be used. That is the one difference. You get to the point? See, these are these capital will be used, first capital will be used, Tier 1 will be used or core capital will be used during the operation itself when they faces a problem. Tier 2 capital will be used when the bank is going to be liquidated. Okay, when it's closed and it has been sold, its assets are being sold. That time only this Tier 2 capital. So that you keep in mind. So that's why it is called by the name going concern capital and gone concern capital. While going itself you can use this. After it is gone, once it is closed only, this capital can be used. Okay. So tier 1 capital, tier 2 capital. And since because of this PCA and other things, capital conservation buffer, this tier 1 capital is in use. Have an understanding. I just thought of to have a. So now this tier 1 capital, also called by the name going concern capital, has two components: common equity tier 1 and additional tier 1. So tier 1 capital has two components. One we know, it is purely common equity tier 1. In capital conservation buffer, we are using this only. And there are certain rules also. Again, there is lot of facts is there. Very important facts. Don't get confused also. Okay. So common equity tier 1 and additional tier 1 capital. Two things: common equity tier 1 capital, CET1, and additional tier 1 capital and tier 2 capital. Now coming back to India, see all the scheduled commercial bank, all the commercial banks operating in India should, according to RBI, should have a minimum total capital. Here, the minimum total capital, what it is saying is, the regulatory capital should have 9%. In India, the minimum total capital or minimum regulatory capital is 9%. Towards what? Towards its risk-weighted assets. We discussed this. But according to BASEL, it is 8%. Now, why this is called going concern? I told you this capital can absorb losses without triggering bankruptcy of the bank. Without triggering the bankruptcy of the bank. We know what is bankruptcy. Bankruptcy means when it's not in a position to pay its obligation or debt. So, without triggering the bankruptcy, you can absorb losses if you have tier 1 capital. That's why it is called as going concern. While going itself, you can take it up. But gone concern capital is where it will absorb losses during the liquidation of the bank. So just have an idea: going concern, gone concern, or core capital or supplementary capital. Okay. Now regarding coming back to the common equity tier 1 capital. Okay. There is a commitment is there. According to RBI, this common equity tier 1 capital should be at least, this is very, very, very important. Okay. Common equity tier 1 capital. Again, we are going for subcategory. Should be 5.5% of risk-weighted asset. We know that in India, the total regulatory capital is 9% of risk-weighted assets. Yes or no? Total capital is 9%. Tier 1 plus tier 2 is 9%. But here, RBI is specifically saying that out of this 9%, so this increase also again have been made under BASEL 3. It has increased the common equity tier 1 component to 5.5%. This is very, very, very important. Okay. And another thing what it is saying is that tier 1 should be at least 7%. These two conditions you keep in mind. Total capital is 9%. Out of that, you can have the entire 9% common equity tier 1. Nobody, RBI will not blame you. It will be happy only. Okay, to the point. But minimum is 9% to risk-weighted asset. But it say that at least out of this 9, this also at least 9. You can increase above 9. So minimum 9 has to be there. Okay, at least out of this 9, common equity tier 1 should be 5.5. And the total tier 1 means tier 1 includes an additional. So that should be at least 7%. So it means that additional tier 1 capital can be, see, since tier 1, see again you can increase it, okay. So there should be the component, since in tier 1 is 7, since the tier 1 is 7, this is 5.5, additional tier 1 capital is 1.5. But again, coming to the tier 2, then you tell me, what about tier 2? The maximum tier 2 we can have is how many percentage? Maximum tier 2, because tier 1 maximum is 7%, at least 7%. So maximum tier 2 we can have is 2%. So the bank has the option. Not to have tier 2. It can have, it is not telling that it requires tier 2. But it wants majority from tier 1. So you can have the entire, see, 5.5 common equity, it can, the additional tier 1 it can increase. There is no limitation. But at whatever it is, tier 2 can't be more than, in this 9, minimum 9, tier 2 can't be more than 2. This you have to derive it. Yes. Don't go by one. What is tier 1 capital? What is tier 1? What is there in the tier 1 capital? Common equity and additional tier 1. Yes or no? Now look into this figure. What is tier 1 capital? Tier 1 capital consists of what? Common equity and additional tier 1. Right? Common, it is saying that this should be at least 7%. Out of 9, tier 1 should be 7%. This should be at least 5.5. This way you have to understand. Minimum tier 1 capital should be 7%. In that, minimum common equity tier 1 capital should be 5.5%. Fact, very, very important, because we will see it why it is so important. Because if they play with this, then you will get trapped. Okay, so be very clear. That's why I told you that even though we have discussed BASEL norm earlier, but when I gone through many articles, these terms are coming across. Okay, so this is actually from the RBI website. This content is from the RBI website, and UPSC asks questions from the RBI website, especially RBI notifications. That's why I'm taking it. I have not taken any. I taken that only. But you understand it. Okay, now tier 2 capital. So tier 2 capital, I'm just connecting only. It is not mentioned. I'm just connecting. Okay, if this is 7%, this can maximum how much it can have only 2%, because 7 plus 2 is 9. Vanida, okay? Okay. So this is we are discussing. Okay, now you can take a photo if you want. It's there in the material. Okay, it's there in the material. But if you want, because material you'll get it tomorrow only. Now we'll see it. Okay, we are again summarizing it. We are just classifying it. Okay. Now, are you clear with this minimum common equity tier 1, 5.5%? Now, according to capital conservation buffer, how much it is? See, don't get confused. Capital conservation is additional thing. Okay, so that is to be 2.5. This also have to be in common equity tier 1. So, with the Basel III norm, how much is the minimum common equity tier 1? 5.5 under the plus 2.5 under capital conservation buffer. Is it okay, Vanida, till now? Now it means that the minimum common equity tier 1 capital is, don't get confused. If UPSC is saying that, then you will say, no, in India, minimum common equity tier capital is 8%. You know, no, RBI, in India it is 9%. Don't get trapped. This word you have to be very, see, in India, minimum common equity tier 1 is, when you look into this plus capital conservation buffer is 8%, because 5.5 plus 2.5 of capital conservation buffer. Okay. Then additional tier 1 capital, minimum should be 1.5. If we are following this, if you can increase it, no problem. So minimum tier 1 capital is 5.5 plus 1.5. Tier 2 capital is 2. Minimum total capital issue is 9. 7 plus 2, 9. And then if you add 9%, 9% of total regulatory capital and 2.5% of capital conservation buffer, the capital adequacy for Indian banks is 11.5. So, if any bank is not having a capital adequacy ratio less than 11.5, it's a concern, and the bank have to take immediate steps to attain this capital adequacy ratio of 11.5. Okay, it's a fact only. Okay, just they will see, be careful about the words. Okay, if you know that what is the component of tier 1, what is the component of tier 2, see, they will not ask you specifically. I'll just explain what it is. Okay, how much? See, in the 9%, there is a commitment is there, 5.5% common equity tier. In capital conservation buffer, additional 2.5, and that too will be in common equity tier 1 capital. These two things you keep in mind. Okay. Now, we discussed all these things. 9%, total capital ongoing basis, tier 2 capital 2%. And if a bank has complied with minimum, then see if you are complying with, see there is an option, okay, this excess additional tier 1 capital, okay, excess tier 1 capital can be admitted. What is it? 5.5 is common equity tier 1 capital, 1.5 only additional tier 1 capital is required, and instead of tier 2 capital, you can have additional tier 1 capital because tier 1 capital is preferred more, and then 2.25% of the capital conservation buffer. Already discussed these points. Now regarding the elements, okay, in case, just see, they will not ask you in detail, but just have an idea what are the elements of, what all are there in the common equity tier 1 capital. Many concepts are there. First one is share capital or paid up equity capital. This is the most important one. Now, when we discuss this paid up capital is the capital issued and paid by the subscriber. Capital means the fund raised and paid by, that's why it is called as paid up capital. Now, most of the time, the share, if you face value, the face value of the paid up capital will be, I told you, rupees 10. Face value for almost all the shares will be 10 rupees. But the price, share price will be higher. What is that? Premium. The exact share price is face value plus the premium, share premium. If you have any doubt, revise the capital market concept, it's there. Okay, so the share premium also, the stock surplus is nothing but share premium. That is also added, it is coming under the common equity. Face value, share premium, then RBI in 2001 onwards have introduced these, they will not ask you all these things, I am just mentioning what is this, okay. Statutory reserves, okay. RBI have made it very clear that for all the banks in India, it has made it mandatory that whenever they make profit, okay, 20% of their, at least 20% of the profit should be kept as reserve fund. So bank will be having statutory reserves, that will also can be included into it. Then if capital reserves, okay, capital reserves, whenever any assets, there is capital gain. Obviously RBI make investment, many investment RBI makes, banks make many investments and they may have capital gains also. So the proceeds, okay, instead of distributing the entire capital gain, it can keep certain reserves from the capital gain whenever there is a sale of assets is there. That is what is called as capital reserves. So there is statutory reserves is there, capital reserves is there, and any other free reserves where it don't have any commitment. See, keep this in mind, all these are reserves. One point you need to, this is shares. Reserves means bank will not use it for lending. It will be kept, reserve has been used to deal with emergency. So in the common equity tier 1 capital, there is no debt instrument is there. There is no debt, this is one important thing. Only equity thing is there, no debt. That is the important point, okay. Instead of knowing 4, just have an idea, reserves and shares, including the share premium. Coming to the additional tier 1 capital, this in the additional tier 1 capital, okay, just this word is very important, okay, preference share, okay, preference share. Again, when we discussed capital market, we discussed about 2 types of shares. Shares are of 2 types, equity shares and preference share. What is the difference between equity shares and, see, this again, they can ask you this question also, I'll explain it, okay. Again, this word, preference share, you will come across this, okay. 2 things about preference share compared to equity share is that, one, regarding this preference share is that, in the case of equity shares, the dividend, what is different from the profit? If the company is made profit, okay, I'm talking, if the bank is making profit or company is making profit, from the profit will be divided to the shareholders. That is what is called as dividend. Okay, so normally for equity shareholders, the profit will be given only when the company is making profit. Equity shareholders, the shareholders will get profit only naturally. Obviously, the owners will get profit only when the company is making profit. If it is loss, they have to bear the loss. There will be capital loss for them. But if the shares is preference shares, they will make a commitment. They will make a commitment and say that your dividend will be a fixed dividend, a fixed rate of dividend. We will give you a fixed rate of dividend. And sometimes what it will say that, so what will happen is that before giving dividend, so this is a specialty of preference share. So one is that before giving dividend to the equity shareholders, preference will be given to the preference shareholders. So whatever the company, even if there is profit, a fixed rate guaranteed to the preference shareholders, dividend will be first given to the preference shareholder. And after that, if there is any balance, will be given to the, so there is one preference in the case of dividends. And another thing about this preference share is that if the preference share is cumulative, so preference share can be two types, cumulative and non-cumulative. Cumulative is again regarding dividend. If the preference share is cumulative means if this year company is in loss, company could not able to pay dividend. But for preference shareholder, company have guaranteed a fixed dividend. Next year, when it makes profit, the previous year as arrears, previous year dividend will be added with this year's dividend and will given to them. That's why that is called as cumulative preference share. Means if you are not getting the dividend, fixed rate of dividend earlier, you will get it in the coming years. That is what is called as cumulative. What about non-cumulative preference share? No, if you don't get it today, this year, it is gone only. Next year, that year which we have guaranteed, which you will get it. And also, another thing about preference shareholders, when a company goes for liquidation, before the common equity shareholders, preference shareholder will get the right. First, they will get the capital, their shareholdings, their contribution they will be getting first. So this you keep in mind, okay. So preference share, now be very careful. Non-cumulative preference share is there in the additional tier 1 capital, because why I am explaining this is cumulative preference share is the tier 2 capital. So be very careful. Non-cumulative preference share. Non-cumulative. Now there is again perpetual. Redeemable or non-redeemable. Perpetual means it is continuous. This means they cannot redeem it. Perpetual means the shareholders cannot redeem their shares. They will on a perpetuity basis. So normally there will maybe at least 30 years. They will be given for a longer period. Perpetual means on a continuous basis this will go on. They cannot redeem it. So redeemable preference share means a particular time period will be given. So normally preference share are redeemable. They are not perpetual. They are non-perpetual. You getting the point? So that maybe see for when a company want to have additional funding, they prefer, instead of going for a debt instrument, they prefer preference shareholding. And they will say that for 5 years I am issuing preference share, and company will take that money by guaranteeing it. It's like if you look into the preference share, it's somewhere like a debt instrument, yes or no? Because a fixed rate of dividend is being guaranteed, and if it is cumulative, obviously if it is a cumulative preference share, you can 100% say that, but here it is not. So this additional tier 1 capital, you cannot say it as a debt investment, because it is not. If it is profitable only, you will need to give. If it is cumulative, what will happen? If this year you can't give, next year you have to give. But it's better than debt instrument. Debt people, then there will be a big problem if you don't give. Here at least to the preference shareholder, you can tell that, yeah, this year I can't give, next year I can give. They will be say, okay. So two keywords. First, understand preference share. So preference share is there in the common equity tier 1? No. Which of the following are the components of common equity tier 1 capital? To confuse you, what they will do? Preference share they will put here. Eliminate preference share, you will get your answer. See, in this there is no common equity tier 1 capital is very important. Yes or no? Capital conservation buffer. Because of that, it's very important. So in the capital conservation buffer, you cannot have preference share. Only equity share. Okay. So 2 words, you know what is preference share? And preference shareholder don't have voting rights. Only equity shareholders have voting right. So please go and revise it. If you have any doubt, go and revise it. Okay. Already we have conducted the test on capital market. Okay. So in that this question was there in that capital market question. Difference between in test itself I have asked you this question. Okay. Okay. So be very non-cumulative, perpetual. Now same like stock surplus. If they have raised any, if they have issued any instruments like preference share, if there is any surplus premium, again see preference share also can be traded. So stock surplus is there. Then if RBI is including any debt instrument, it is the discretion of RBI. See, basically debt instruments are issued for what? To raise fund, to create capital, to meet the regulatory norms. You might have seen that some banks raising certain debt instrument to meet you might have seen it, to meet the BASEL norms, regulatory norms. So that is there. Okay, so here there is no debt instruments, but here it can have debt instrument, but again predominantly it is in the form of equity only. So then any other type of instruments generally notified by RBI from time to time for inclusion in additional Tier 1 gift. So this is the only thing you need to keep in mind regarding additional perpetual non-cumulative preference shares comes under additional Tier 1 capital. Now it is easy. If you know this concept, the Tier 2 capital component become very easy. Okay. Now general provisions and loss reserves under when the non-performing assets. I told you what is the difference between gross NPA and net NPA. What is the difference between gross NPA and net NPA? Because again, that is important. You need to be very clear regarding gross NPA and net NPA to understand that PCA. Gross NPA is total bad loan. Gross NPA is total bad loan. Gross NPA is. See, you will come across these 2 words. Okay. Again, they will trap you by these words. Instead of gross, they will put net. So be very careful whether it is gross or net. Okay. It has a meaning, different meaning. Because gross NPA is the total bad loan. To the total bad loan, there is a provisioning norm is there. What is provisioning norm? From your reserve capital, you have to you have to deal with the bad loan. Because now bad loan become, depending upon the severity of the bad loan, a certain proportion of provisioning is being provided. So after giving the provisioning amount, so gross NPA minus provisioning amount, how much you have done for is what? Net NPA. So bank will be having general provisions as well as loss reserves. For lost account, some reserves will be there. See, we have to bank balance sheet has to be clean. Bank balance sheet should not have a lost asset. You cannot keep a lost asset in the balance sheet. It shows the weakness of a. See, how will you know the weaknesses of a company or a bank? By looking into the balance sheet, by looking into the asset and liability. We have to see that whether net worth is there. What is net worth? Difference between assets and liability. Asset should be more than liability. Difference between asset and liability is net worth. So the balance sheet, if you look into the net worth, how can you look into the net worth? Look into the balance sheet, look into the asset, look into the liability. So you cannot have a bad asset in the balance sheet. So the bad asset has to be removed by good asset. That is what is called as provisioning. Okay, so general provision and loss reserves comes under Tier 2. So that amount which have been kept for it. Then any debt capital instrument which have been recognized by RBI as Tier 2 capital. Okay, so mainly Tier 2 capital has debt instruments. Tier 2 capital has debt instruments. Okay, including even hybrid, and then preference shares. Okay, see other 3. See, one preference share we discussed, perpetual, non-cumulative. Rest of all the preference share comes under Tier 2. For example, see perpetual non-cumulative there. Perpetual cumulative will come under here. Then non-perpetual, redeemable is non-perpetual. Redeemable, non-cumulative and redeemable cumulative preference share will come all. So other than that's I'm telling, if you know additional Tier 1, other than the perpetual non-cumulative preference share. Rest of the preference share will come under tier 2 capital. Okay. Then revaluation reserve, stock surplus, again same like the share premium of tier 2 capital. Share premium of tier 2 capital means excess of the stock share value, excess of the face value is what is called as share premium or stock surplus. Last one is revaluation reserves. What is revaluation? We have discussed in regarding RBI reserves. Revaluation is, see, you have to reevaluate your assets. The different assets you are having, whether it is gold or government securities or bonds, the value will change. So you have to reevaluate, and based on the revaluation, you have to keep some reserves for your assets. Okay, mark to market losses is regarding that revaluation only. If there is any losses, you have to find it. Also, mainly just have an idea, these two things, okay. Tier 2 capital has, even though additional tier 1 capital can have debt, major debt fundraising is happening through. That's why tier 2 capital have been used, means the importance of tier 2 capital is very less, just 2% out of 9%. Now these are the two questions being asked in regarding in 2007. So they simply asked, simple question was there, okay. Basel 2, they asked regarding Basel 2. See, during Basel 2 time period, there is no liquidity commitment, no capital conservation commitment, no leverage commitment, all have been introduced under Basel 3. Basel 2 relate to which one of the following? It is international standards for measuring the advocacy of a bank. See, that time it was only banks advocacy was there. But Basel 3 things changed. In 2015, UPSC asked Basel 3 Accord or simply Basel 3. It is aimed at improving banking sector's ability to deal with financial and economic stress and improve risk management. For that only Basel 3. Okay. So already two questions have been asked. So be very clear.